Thank you. Welcome to the Monday, March 6, 2023 meeting of the Wayzata Planning Commission. I hereby call the meeting to order. My name is Larissa Stockton, and I am the chair of the Planning Commission. I have a few words about how to participate in this evening's meeting. Director Gellner, is Zoom active?
It is.
Okay. So first we have the Zoom meeting ID 884-0285-5365, passcode 039084. Members of the public may attend this Planning Commission meeting in person, provided they follow all city policies and protocols related to the pandemic. Members of the public may watch and listen remotely by viewing the meeting on Channel 8 WCTV and the city's website at wayzata.org/WCTV. Public comment during the public forum and/or public hearing portions of the meeting may be provided in person at the meeting in advance or by logging into the Zoom call and raising your hand during the public hearing. When your name is called in the meeting, you will be seen and heard in our council chambers and the cable channel. You'll be asked to unmute, and then you may begin your comment. All public comments must include your full name and address. The city encourages comments or questions about items on the agenda, and when possible, requests that you submit them in advance by emailing publiccomment@wayzata.org, calling city staff at 952-404-5323, or mailing Wayzata City Hall at 600 Race Street East, Wayzata, Minnesota, 55391. Attention public comment. Next on the agenda is the roll call. Director Gellner, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Schwalbe.
Here.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Here.
Commissioner Douglas.
Here.
Chair Stockton.
Here.
Commissioner Severson. Here. Commissioner Elg.
Here.
And Chair, please note Commissioner Merriam is absent this evening.
Thank you. Next, we have the approval of tonight's meeting agenda. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or changes to the agenda for tonight? If not, may I have a motion to approve as presented the agenda?
So moved, Douglas.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. May I have a second?
Second, Elg.
Thank you, Commissioner Elk. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes and the agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. This evening's consent agenda consists of 3 items. A, acknowledgement of withdrawal of the C1 text amendment application. B, approval of Planning Commission report and recommendation for approval of development application at 200 Wayzata Boulevard West, Wayzata Country Club. And C, approval of meeting minutes for February 6, 2023. Commissioners, any questions or comments on any item of the consent agenda or wish to pull any item for further discussion or action? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved, Schwalbe.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwalbe. May I have a second?
Second, Douglas.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye, opposed nay.
Aye.
The ayes have it, the motion passes, and the consent agenda is approved. Great. Next, we have the public hearing items. We have one item for the public hearing, which is consider the approval of Planning Commission report and recommendation of approval for Panaway Boardwalk and docks at 402 Lake Street East. Director Gellner, would you kindly walk us through the application?
Certainly. I'll start off by passing around a sample of the boardwalk Kebony wood. This would be the dock and the boardwalk wood that would be used on the decking. So I'll pass this around in case you'd like to see that. So the Panaway Boardwalk and Docks are technically located at the address of 402 Lake Street, and the city of Wayzata is the owner and applicant. Here's the project location. I have several other images as well for you this evening. The property is zoned R2, medium-density, single-family residential. It's been R2 for as long as I've seen zoning maps in the city, so I'm not sure how long exactly, but for many decades. It's also been guided as parkland, and then, of course, Lake Minnetonka is guided for lake. Yes. Development application requests include 2 pretty unique conditional use permits. I don't believe any of the commissioners here have seen CUPs quite like these. We have a conditional use permit here for the use of the boardwalk and docks within the floodway, meaning within Lake Minnetonka, and a conditional use permit for an outdoor recreation use within the R2 district. So a quick map for you. I have in white, you can see the existing docks as they're laid out today. And then I have in orange the proposed dock layout with the proposed boardwalk footprint. I'm sorry, I suppose the colors don't work well on your screens yet. That's okay. So hopefully we'll have that fixed soon. But in the meantime, I apologize, it may be easier to look up behind you. I don't have a lot of differentiation in colors for other parts of the presentation though. So we've been calling the docks that are near the depot docks, and the docks that are near Broadway Avenue as it goes to the lake, we've been calling them the Broadway docks. We may end up with different naming over time, but at this point, that is the naming that we've been using. There is space for 17 boats at the depot dock in our design. It is adding 4 slips from what is there presently, and the boardwalk is 10 feet wide, so that'll give plenty of space for people to walk along. And then we have railings on both sides of the proposed boardwalk for safety that would be maintained year-round, so snow removal would occur on the boardwalk. And then we would have 2 terraces that are open in the summertime where the railing is removed and terraces are added that step down to the water. And then also and then just mind you, then those terraces, the railing would be put back up in the winter and those terraces would be removed. And then there's space for 33 boats at the Broadway docks, and that's adding 6 slips to the eastern portion there. I have more details on the design as well. Here's a rendering of the boardwalk. This was completed about 4 years ago, and it shows that terrace. The design is slightly different now, but this is a rendering that was created back when we did our schematic or our concept design for the boardwalk. Civitas is our landscape architect for this project, and they've completed this rendering to show a view of the boardwalk and docks. This is standing in the central gardens there towards the eastern side of the project. Then I have another rendering, and this is from the 4th floor of Wayzata Place condominiums, showing the boardwalk and docks as well. Now, we did some community meetings this summer that were related to design decisions for the boardwalk and docks. Of course, we've been having community meetings on Panaway for many, many years, but we had some this summer. We sent mailers to 4,000 people. We had 200 people come to an event in July where we hosted an ice cream social, and we received really good feedback from that event. It was very helpful. Now, the city council's made a number of actions before tonight, so that I'll kind of try to put tonight's decision into some context. So the city council approved the schematic design for the boardwalk and docks back in 2018, and that also includes a schematic design for park space on each end. So the depot park surrounding the historic train depot and the eco park surrounding the section foreman house. They approved the final design in August of 2022 after those community engagement events. And they asked the city to establish a dock design working group. At the August meetings, they realized that more design work needed to be done on the docks. And they established that group who's met, we're gonna end up meeting a total of 6 times between October of 22 and this April of 2023. The city council looked at dock configurations and types of dock systems, and they made those decisions in October of 2022. And I can run through that in more detail here. The city council also approved construction documents for the boardwalk and docks just last month in January, or 2 months ago now in January. And they also authorized the city to begin the bidding process for the boardwalk and docks. They then also approved the first of several financing actions related to this work in February. They accepted the first of 2 bid packages in February of 2023. The second bid package has just been released and will be opened. The bid day is coming for that in March. And we have ongoing Panaway District Committee meetings. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of our Panaway District Committee. It was created only 2 years ago because we were experiencing so many inquiries for people desiring to use the space for special events and lots of input on landscaping or noise issues or different just quality of life issues. And trying to manage a brand-new park space has been new for us. So we have assigned our parks planner, Nick Keyser, to staff the Panaway District Committee. And frequently, we have our Public Works Director present, as well as our city engineer, that's Mike Kelly. We also have our Chief of Police come to the meetings frequently to talk about any nuisance issues that come up. And then our communications coordinator is often present. And so we have a lot of departments all working on Panaway in different ways. And our special event permit process, that is approved by Mike Kelly, so he's often reporting back to the Panaway District Committee. So that's been a really helpful working group for us to have, and actually we'll take the dock design working group and really blend that, dissolve it into the Panaway District Committee long-term, because they'll continue to talk about the operations of the space. So if you ever have any interest in joining that committee, I think we could always use more voices on that committee about how to use the space. So in our design, we have the boardwalk is made of ebony wood decking and railing, and that's the sample that I passed around. Stainless steel cables and fascia, 2 terraces with the bench. We'll have benches near those 2 terraces, and again, those terraces will be removed in the winter time, and then railing will be reinstalled for the winter. And we do plan to maintain the boardwalk year-round. We will have other policies that we'll establish here within the next year before opening day that talk about whether, I doubt we'll allow bicycles on the boardwalk, I doubt we'll allow rollerblades or skateboards, it'll be strollers or wheelchairs only for wheeled devices. And we'll have other policies related to fishing or other activities. So I don't have all those figured out yet. That's discussions that'll be ongoing with council. And then just while I'm thinking of it, I do at the end of the slideshow, if you'd like to see, I have a proposed schedule for the construction of the boardwalk and docks, but generally we are hoping to start on June 1st. And it would take many months. It would take the remainder of 2023 to be substantially complete. I think we'll have a substantially complete day probably in the fall, hopefully, with like lighting and different things going in later into the winter. So I want to talk about the boardwalk. It's about 800. It's actually more than 800 feet in length. It's actually more like 1,200 feet in length, and there's the 2 terraces. And I want to move over to the docks here quickly. The dock design working group was established in October, and it includes the following members listed here. So we made sure to have LMCD, we made sure to have a representative from the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District because they are a very important entity in the permitting of dock facilities on Lake Minnetonka. And Dan Basson's been really helpful to have there. Many charter operators, our Chamber of Commerce president. We've had local boat owners on the committee. That's been very helpful. The Conservancy, as well as Rick Bourne, the neighbor of the Boatworks owner, and Councilmember Parkhill. So we've had 6 meetings so far. We've really talked through a lot of details that I know you may have questions about this evening. And we do hope to take the work of that group and blend it with the Panaway District Committee moving forward as well. Now, the dock working group has worked on several priorities. I'll just be brief, but they have worked through a lot of issues in just 4 meetings so far. They've really emphasized how important it is to local businesses to have access to downtown via boat. And we've talked a lot about the dock configuration, and it was very important to them that we had a diversity of slip sizes that are specific to Lake Minnetonka. So we pulled some data on the boats that we see on the lake and tried to have a design that has that diversity in slip size. We have permitting restrictions from Lake Minnetonka Conservation District that definitely limits the design decisions that we've made to this point and will make in the future. We do have space for potential expansion in the future, but the council's not prepared to move forward with an expanded plan yet, but I can show you the general footprint of where those potential expansions could go. And it was important to the dock design group that we accommodated charter operations as well. And that would happen primarily at the depot dock where it happens today. We don't have any charters planned for the Broadway docks. We don't have facilities really set up for that at the Broadway side. Now, for structural considerations, we talked at length about the pros and cons of wood versus steel piles for the docks. Ultimately, after weighing that decision, the council chose to go with steel piles, and I can explain more about that if you're interested. Also, the dock working group and the council discussed whether floating or fixed docks were the right decision for this design, and decided that floating docks were the best decision going forward. Now, that's different than how it looks today. The floating docks that you experience today, when you walk on them, your whole body weight shifts as you walk. These will be much more stable. The planned docks, they'll still float when the water levels change year to year, based if there's a drought, but you'll feel steady on your feet on these new docks. Now, the aesthetics, we talked a lot about materiality of the decking and the fascia and the posts, and I have a couple images to show you of what final selections were made in that area. And then the dock working group has talked extensively with staff as well as council about just ongoing maintenance considerations as well. And also, our conversations right now have been really focused on the operations and maintenance of the docks. So whether to continue at this current staffing levels that we've had in previous summers or whether to increase that. We've discussed whether a potential reservation or permit system would be helpful to members of the public who use these facilities, and what kind of revenue sources may be potentially available for the docks. So I wanted to give you this context. I know it's not exactly tied directly to the conditional use permits this evening, but I thought it was important context for you in case you had not heard of this work that has been previously done on these details. So we did decide on floating wood docks that are on steel piles, and here's the layout for each of those, the depot docks and Broadway docks. And we are adding 4 slips to the depot docks, and we have 17 boats total here, plus 3 loading zones at the depot docks for a total of 20 boats. And there's space for those charter operations to occur at the depot as well. And then on the Broadway side, we have 30 boat spaces and 3 loading zone areas for a total of 33 boats. And the colors of the boats coincide with the different sizes, and that is easier to see within the plan sheets in your packet as well. I wanted to highlight the 2 potential areas for additional docks, and I'll go back a slide so you can see why I added the 200 feet distance limit to the slide. There's a line that crosses those plan sheets that's a 200-foot mark basically from the shore, essentially out into the water. The LMCD requires that docks remain within 200 feet of the ordinary high water level. And so that will be something we would need to work through within an expansion plan. And the 2 potential locations, first for depot docks would be to go more outward southward into the lake. And for the Broadway docks, the potential additional docks could be located eastward, so right in front of Cove. So a number of decisions would need to be made at the council level to add additional docks, but there is the capability of doing so in the future. Now the dock finishes, you saw the Kebony wood decking. We're looking at galvanized steel piles and Kebony wood fascia on the sides of the deck, and then dock bumpers as well try to get a neutral color for that. Now the steel piles will be, I think the height range on those piles is it's gonna be taller than what you're seeing in that image. It's actually more, I think, 2 feet to 3 feet, depending on how high the decking is off of the water any given summer. But we're working on some design solutions to make those blend in as best we can. Now, there's a number of different permitting steps here. So this is just one of a lot of different steps that are being taken by Civitas at this time. The DNR, the Army Corps of Engineers, Pollution Control Agency, Lake Minnetonka Conservation District, Minnehaha Creek Watershed, and the State Historic Preservation Office all require permits. The only permit we have in place right now is the Minnehaha Creek Watershed, and all of the others have been applied for and are pending. Luckily, there is a program called the Joint Permit Application, where you can fill out all of these permit applications in one swoop. So we've done that, and we have a really strong team of consultants helping work through that. Now, those permits are very technical, and the one that you're looking at tonight is quite technical as well in terms of the floodway storage. So I'll do my best to answer what I can for floodway storage. So floodway mitigation. I have an image that's a little bit easier for me to explain. When we add the piles, when you drive the piles into the bed of Lake Minnetonka, we'll have space within the water that's now filled with piles, and now that water that would have been there needs somewhere to go, or else the lake level will rise. So we need to carve out space within the lake somewhere that's approved, where we can make space for that water to go. Now, this idea came up quite a while ago that we could use, I'll go back to the map, we could use the space that we own as a city over by the Section Foreman House, by the stormwater pond over there, to create more flood capacity. So we've moved forward with that idea and submitted that to all the permitting agencies. And in this area, we would be removing some soil and then planting species that are favorable to a wet prairie. And so we do some grading work in this area, and that would help us mitigate the floodway capacity that we are creating, that issue we're creating with the piles. I think I explained that pretty well. I'm kind of proud of myself. That was, I feel like I've attempted that other times and not been so successful. So our city engineer's been looking at this design for a long time, and he feels that the design will not increase the Lake Minnetonka flood stage, meaning we're not making flooding issues any worse. Also, that the structural design is sufficiently flood-proofed. Really, it's not really a structure. If water were to run over it, we'd be okay. The grading and restoration plans for the removal of the soil and then moving that to the existing stormwater pond, all of that work meets our city code requirements. And we've known that for several years now, but need to go through the motions of having this entitlement process in place. So we notified neighbors of the public hearing this evening. Public hearing is required for these 2 conditional use permits. The neighborhood notice was that we also mailed a letter that was more detailed to people within 500 feet, and we haven't received any comments so far. Now, there's 2 conditional use permits that are in the packet. We have the criteria. It can actually point you to where you would find that general criteria. I kind of like to have that in front of you for the discussion. That would start on page 37 of 68. You'd see those applicable code provisions for review. And what we've done here is staff has actually gone through all of these requirements and found that this proposal complies with all of the standards for a floodplain CUP. And it complies with all the standards for a recreational use. And typically what that would mean is that the site is heavily landscaped, it's open to the public, it meets minimum setbacks, and it's on a busier street in town. All of those things are met. So since this project has so much momentum behind it in some other ways, and because we found that all the criteria were met, we took a next step on this one, and we did draft a Planning Commission report and recommendation of approval for your consideration this evening. Now, the findings are in the report, and there's one condition in the report, and that is for an easement to be recorded in a form acceptable to the city attorney that would encumber that additional flood area in the eco park, so that long-term, we always ensured that future staff understood that that portion of land needed to be kept the way it was for this purpose. And if changes were to be made, then we would need to adjust that easement over time. And that's something we would typically, we would need for a private property owner as well. So that was the only condition that we saw as necessary and appropriate for these conditional use permits. Otherwise, nothing in particular stuck out to staff as a concern within our zoning ordinance. I would say that the public comments that we've received otherwise have been more based on just other comments on the project. I don't have any formal public comments on these CUPs at this point. So we've prepared that report and recommendation of approval. We still, we did that ahead of the public hearing, so we'll still need to hold a public hearing. If you have any adjustments to the draft report and recommendation, I'd be very open to hearing those. And if you're comfortable this evening, we'd like to move it forward if you're open to that. And then we would bring this over to the city council within a couple weeks for their review. So, Chair, I'll stop there and just see if you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Director Gellner. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Absolutely.
So, by the way, I like the materials a lot. Very, very good choices. So far, the Panaway's been a huge success. It brought a lot of people into the town. It was very busy all summer. In fact, it was a little crowded at times, so it's definitely a draw. And now when you add the boardwalk, which is a beautiful thing, but there will be room for that many more people. I don't know if we have parking for that many more people. We were just talking about that earlier. But I think we can assume that there will be more and more people who will come to Wayzata, who will want to, more, word will get around about the Panaway as it exists, and then you add that boardwalk in, it could be a really big draw. So in terms of its effect on the surrounding area, I'm just wondering if the city has taken anything into consideration of what they should do about monitoring, about efforts to control the usage, both of the regular Panaway that we have now and really what's going to be coming. I can see young kids getting together and wanting to be on that boardwalk even late at night. And is anybody going to be there? Do we have the police staff to monitor that? And I know it's not a year-round thing that it will be that big of an issue, but during, I don't know, from April, May on, you know, until October, there could be quite a few people that are brought into the city, that particular 3-4 block area. And I'm just wondering what the city has thought about mitigating whatever potential problems all those extra people could bring.
Sure. So Chair and Commission, the Panaway District Committee has been the most involved in conversations of how to manage the space and manage nuisances within the space. So they added bike patrol, so bicycle patrol, I think that was last summer or the summer before. We're hiring more officers currently, and the city council is budgeted for that. I think we'll also look at models for community-style policing or peace officers, so volunteers who are willing to be in the space and help clean up and to just give people directions and maybe give the police a quick call if something's coming up. So just having volunteers who are willing to be there in that space and provide some more just stewardship of the area. That's a model that's used in other big public places and maybe uses less resources than having uniformed officers present at all times. That's kind of changes the look and feel of the place as well. So Panaway District Committee is really the forum for discussions about how to use the space and manage the space. So I think that I would welcome any comments that you have ongoing that I can bring back to that committee, and we can continue to discuss them with the police chief and public works director. That's our best forum right now.
Well, I'm happy about the bike patrol. I didn't really notice that last year. And the extra police, is part of that going to be particularly evenings and weekends
Yes.
down there?
Yeah, I think the goal is to always have 2 officers on every shift, and I don't think we have that right now. We have 1 officer for some.
And then there's the drag racing that more people brings. Any thought on how to control that?
I would have to talk to our chief more. I know that the chief's talked to the Panaway District Committee quite a bit about that, and Ms. Dolan has been part of those conversations as well. I believe he's made some efforts to work on that, but ultimately it's still just something we may not be able to fully control.
I just don't want us to be in a position where we're caught without having a plan for what to do, because people are going to come. And it's only a 3-4 block area, and it's going to be tight. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwalbe. Ken, did you have a comment?
Sure, I'll make a few comments.
Okay.
Well, I think first I'd like to acknowledge the considerable and lengthy work by the public and by the many committees and dock working group, the talented professionals we have to get us to this point. I think what I've seen, they did a nice job, and even most recently selecting, making decisions about the size of the boardwalk and the use of the materials. Probably the biggest concern I had when I looked at all this was just the flood-proof nature of the products we're using and of the location. I see the city engineer has looked at it and blessed it, so I think that's a very positive thing. I mean, there are numerous criteria, standards, conditions pertaining to operational issues and adverse effect issues that are part of this CUP. And looking at the report, I think staff has done a pretty thorough job in analyzing and addressing the issues that are established in this criteria. So overall, I think it appears that the criteria have been met, and it's consistent with some of the bigger issues of meeting the comprehensive plan, and the many criteria that went into that are important to approve these PUDs. So I'm pretty comfortable with where we're at.
Thank you,
I have one quick question. When you talked about the additional slips, is that additional to the temporary docks we've been using?
That's
Not the
correct.
original? Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
to what you see there today.
And how did they come up with that number?
Well, we're allowed only so many by Lake Minnetonka Conservation District, so
That's
we're
what I'm
nearly
wondering.
maxed out there, and then just configuring the slips as best we could for that
Yeah.
variety. We really tried to maximize as much as we could within our design constraints, though, and we know that there's definitely residents and business owners who want to see expansion happen now. But the city council wasn't able to recommend that yet until we have more planning in place and more funding sources ready to go. And then, of course, we'd need to work through extensive permitting as well, with that 200-foot limit and other restrictions.
I appreciate the work that's been done on the CUPs in front of us, and there are other issues that I am concerned about, and what Commissioner Schwalbe talked about, I also have concerns about that. And I also, last summer, there were a lot of issues. And it brings a lot of people in Wayzata. For 30 years, I wanted a boardwalk when it was first mentioned, 30-some years ago by the Carish brothers. And I've wanted more docks. I think those are really important features for our restaurant. I'm just a little concerned about the numbers of people coming into town. And as a resident, I live very close to it, we don't even go near Lake Street on the weekends. You can't get through. You can't, I'm glad the restaurants are filled. I'm very happy about that. But I'm concerned about traffic. We just had this big discussion at our workshop about parking, and I am really concerned about it. And I know we're ruling basically on the CUP, but I had to make my comments. And I'm wondering, the funding, we were promised at the beginning that the taxpayers would not be affected. Well, more police officers cost taxpayers more money. And it's just mushrooming, and I was in on the original committee 12 years ago when we started this, and this is turning out to be, it was all going to be privately raised funding, and all of a sudden we're bonding, which affects our city, our taxes. So I've stated these concerns all along. I will vote on the CUP because that's dealing with the floodplain, but if we were dealing on other issues, I would vote against this.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas.
No questions for me?
Chair, just a reminder for the public hearing, too.
Okay, right, well, let's go to the public hearing then.
I got ahead of
I got lost in the questions. Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to make some comments about the public hearing. It's a time for us to listen to our community about the approval requests we're considering, and it's an important part of our official process that allows the public to participate. Any questions asked during the public hearing will be held until the end of the hearing and may be addressed by staff at that point. With that said, I'll now open the public hearing for the CUP for, where's the title of it? Approval of the CUP for accessory structure and docks within floodplain district, and approval of CUP for outdoor public recreational use. Thank you. If you wish to speak, please come forward to the podium or raise your hand if you're on Zoom. State your name and address for the record, and let us know if you're connected to the application in any way or are representing anyone else.
I'm Mary Dolan. I'm actually a resident. Full disclosure, I am on the Panaway District Committee as a resident. Can you hear me? Anyway, Emily did a great presentation, and Commissioner Schwalbe, you have many of the concerns I have. I live just off of Lake Street myself, and the past 2 summers have really gotten just more than rowdy. I mean, it's an experience to be down there at 10 o'clock, or there's just a lot of noise. And I know our police chief is doing his best to handle things, but we need more police. He needs more help and support. That said, this is sort of, and I did talk to Jeff, our city manager, a couple of weeks ago. This is before all these trains started derailing. With the pile driving that's going to start, my concern is that going to destabilize the railroad bed? I'm not an engineer. I don't know. But I'm just, I have no idea, but that would be a real disaster, because we have these 1 and 2 mile long trains going through, and I know they're carrying chemicals. So that would be a disaster. Bringing that up, I'll just let that sit there for a while. And also on this illustration you have up here, this photograph, I'm hoping that there could be sort of a moratorium on, I worry about dock creep, and that the whole bay is going to turn into a marina. And this is the only window we really have of kind of old Wayzata looking out with a view to the lake. And I'm hoping we can save that somehow. And that is it. I will say, since the trains have been coming off of the tracks, that is a concern of mine. Thank you.
Ms. Dolan, can you state your address just for the record for a minute?
540 Indian Mound.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dolan. If there's no one else in the room that would like to speak tonight, then will we check Zoom for anyone?
There is no one on Zoom wishing to speak.
Okey-dokes. So if that's everything, then I think I can close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have any further discussion on this item?
I could answer the question from the public hearing.
Oh, yes, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Yes, so I appreciate the concern about destabilizing the railroad bed, and I know that the Army Corps of Engineers has authority over that. And then also, we have received a letter of acknowledgement from BNSF of this project and consent to move forward. So we are not experiencing at this time concerns from BNSF or the Army Corps of Engineers, but I would acknowledge that there are 74 piles with this project. Oh my God. So it will be significant. Okay.
Thank you, Director Kellner. Commissioners, do we have any further questions for staff
More questions?
or comments?
I just have one quick question. I was looking at the poles, the metal, are they steel or whatever the,
Steel.
yeah,
Is that on
They
the
stick-
boardwalk or down below?
on the boardwalk.
On the boardwalk?
It looked like they were poles that stick up about this far from the boardwalk.
Are they in this image, or is it the
No,
docks?
can we look at a different image? No. Thought there were some posts that,
It might have been from the docks. We have some-
maybe I'm mistaken. Oh, there. Galvanized steel piles.
Oh, sorry, we don't take commentary from the audience, actually. I apologize for that. We have to do that during the public hearing.
Are those, are those going to be exposed?
Yes, they will. So that's, we need those piles to go into the lake bed.
Right.
And then come up. And then the dock can actually move up and down based on the water levels. So you may have noticed last summer with the drought, the docks were way too high.
Yeah.
They, you know, some boaters couldn't even really use
Oh,
them.
that's why they're floating.
So then the dock, they'll be able to move up and down on the water levels then, which is really a good long-term plan for us since, you know, it's possible that we will see varying lake levels
Why?
year to year.
I have a question, because down at the depot docks, you know, they have the wood pilings, and they come up about this high, and then they have the railing. I can just see some little kids running down that dock and hitting those. I don't know, did they take that safety into consideration?
I mean, I think that they'll be taller than that even. They'll probably be more like 2 to 3 feet tall, actually. But,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, well, I think that's a tough thing. People have to watch their kids in this area. Near the water, near the open water, that's just, it'll have to be necessary.
It's just different. I like the ones at the depot, because you're very aware that they're there.
Yeah, so these are just an example, but our piles will be a little taller. They'll be more like waist height
Okay,
as compared to foot height or ankle height.
okay. That's
Yeah,
minor
and
compared
I
to.
think the reality of it is the height of the pile above the dock will depend on the water
The
elevation.
water levels, yeah,
Right,
it goes up and
exactly.
down.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting.
And if I'm correct, that's on the docks only, not the boardwalk.
Yes, the boardwalk will have a railing on both
Railing,
sides, except for that terrace area. So, you know, we can put signs up at the end of each boardwalk that say that there's an open area. People don't tend to read signs like that. They just keep walking, so.
Yeah.
Has the city been surprised at how many people from around the area have been drawn to our lake area because of the Panaway?
Surprised?
Yeah. Is it more than you expected?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, if we had estimates ever
Okay.
of what we thought, but we expected it to be popular.
Because you've heard a lot of feedback by Mrs. Dolan, and certainly I've had people come up to me, and maybe the rest of us have as well, saying that they're really concerned about the Panaway, and that it is not the old cute, quaint downtown Wayzata with so many extra people there. And sometimes when you're in the middle of something, you have to take a moment and say, is this what I expected it to be? So I guess my question is this what you expected it to be?
Yes.
Okay.
And we did a community survey about a year ago and found that we had a really high approval rating for Panaway Phase 1.
Okay. And you haven't had a lot of complaints about the people, the huge amount of extra people on the weekends and in the evenings, and noise, that hasn't come to your attention?
We've been discussing that at length in the Panaway District Committee with Mary Dolan and others.
Okay. Has that made you want to change any part of it?
It's not really my decision, it's the city council's direction, and they have chosen to move forward with this project.
Okay. So then the only real thing at this point is what can we do to make it still as friendly as we can to the people who live in Wayzata? Like more bike patrol, more police, whatever. How many new police are we getting?
I don't have that information this evening. I think tonight's really focused on the 2 conditional use permits. I think that if you're interested in joining the Panaway District Committee, that would be the perfect venue for these ongoing conversations about crowd management and safety.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwalbe. With regards to the conditional use permit itself, I think I agree with all the comments made, but with regards to the permit, Commissioner Sorensen touched on it meeting the various provisions that we're here to assess. And I also agree with that. I do think it would be worthwhile to note upon that recognition that there's concern over tone and use management. I think City Council did hear a lot about Panaway Phase 1, and I can imagine that they're not focused heavily on mitigating some of the unintended uses and things that have occurred and are already addressing that. And some of those solutions will work for what's involved here, although I'd have to imagine that's top priority from experience. And to ensure safety standards with regards to the railroad, that it's just communicated clearly upfront that that's been looked at in detail to ease concerns over that. I also think it would be worthwhile to have a drawing to refer to that can demonstrate potential growth of the boardwalk and/or docking system, so that not to allude to that necessarily happening in this phase or with the current level of funding or intention, but to make it clear that if, the world continues to grow and evolve, that we can accommodate with the new structures being put in place. I love the material that was chosen. But yeah, so in terms of meeting the actual conditions, I think we may be there, and I'm wondering if other commissioners feel the same, and if we can vote with those sub-notes being passed on to council.
Yes.
And if anyone is willing to make a motion.
Well, on that motion, do we have to repeat everything you just said?
I hope not.
Just read it, it's right there.
In that
Unless-
case,
I think that
I
I
would-
have all these comments here I can bring to council.
Thank you.
I'm gonna do that.
In that case, I'd make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the flood plan CUP and the recreational use COP, subject to the following condition illustrated. Do you want me to read it, or item A under 4.1, page 8 of the report?
Yep, Madam Chair and Commissioner, I might recommend that if you could just modify your motion to adopt the report and recommendation of approval of CUPs for Panaway Boardwalk and Docks at 402 Lake Street East as presented. It incorporates that. That would be my recommended
Very good.
motion.
Excellent.
That's my motion.
That's what he said. Thank you, Commissioner Elg. May I have a second?
Second, Severson.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Any further discussion? Shall we take, all those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. The draft report and recommendation will be on the consent agenda at our next meeting, and after adoption, we'll go on to City Council for further consideration. Did I miss
Actually,
something?
Chair, this will go straight to council.
Oh.
It'll be on the consent agenda next week.
Fantastic.
So just that note for the record.
Excellent. That's quicker than we expected. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Director Gellner. I guess we can go back to any other items for this evening.
So I don't have any items for you on the March 20th agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that meeting. I'll send you a formal email about that. But I don't end up having any applications. So our next meeting will be on Monday, April 3rd. And I'm looking at having some zoning amendments in front of you and possibly a development application. And then we'll be on a pretty regular schedule after that. Do you have any questions or about upcoming agendas or agenda items? I know we have we have some applications that are in that incomplete stage. So once they're complete, I'll add the plans to the website. You'll see it in the Wayzata Weekly that we've deemed it complete and scheduled a public hearing. That's kind of the first place that you can find out. So those are those Friday emails called the Wayzata Weekly. So you can sign up with your city email or personal email, whatever you prefer. But that's when you'll kind of hear first whether we have something ready for public hearing. Otherwise, you can always ask me if you're curious. But otherwise, April 3rd will be our next meeting, and then we'll be on our way. I think as the summer goes on, I try to consolidate meetings as much as I can and cancel as many as possible while still getting developments through in a timely manner. So And I don't have, one final note, Chair. We did a workshop tonight. We won't do many more of those this year. I only save those for zoning amendments to kind of just get in front of you before a hearing.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Gellner. Thank you, staff and council members. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. May I have a second?
Second. Oh.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion passes. And the Wayzata Planning Commission meeting is adjourned.